And good afternoon, and welcome to One-on-One, a conversation with, is what I'll call this series right now. Threw myself for a loop there. It is Wednesday, August 26th. It is 1 p.m., and let's see if he is still joining me or if he quit. Mr. Frank Prosnitz.
Never quit. You never quit.
That's it. Well, we have wrapped up 18 interviews with Newport City Council candidates. And they are all now available easily to find on whatsupnewp.com. And now we're going to start changing our direction and focusing on some other races that are important during and up to the September 8th primary.
We begin actually today. We're going to begin with the General Assembly with the looking first at those where there are primary elections. So this is District 74. This is Deborah Ruggiero, who is the incumbent from Jamestown, and she is being challenged by Rick Lombardi Jr. from Middletown, who is currently on the Middletown Town Council and has decided to run for representative. And in fact, the winner of the primary is the winner of the race, because there is no Republican that's in this race. So that will be an interesting one. Ryan, before we get going, I didn't have a chance to listen into that radio station, and I don't know whether you did it all, whether or not the question of campaign finances came up.
Yeah, but it was small, and we can catch up about that later on, and we'll be writing a lot more about it. Suddenly became an issue. But what I want to do is, before we dive in, I want to say hi, Rick.
Hi, guys. Hi, Ryan. Hi, Frank. How are you guys?
Rick.
I'm doing all right. I want to show people there are, I don't know if this number is accurate, but 13,867 people who live in State House District 74, 5,819 maybe homes. I'm going to bring up this image here so people know if they live in District 74. And we're going to dive in here. And Rick, you correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm grabbing it off of a website, but there is District 74 that includes Jamestown as well as parts of Middletown.
You got it. That's exactly what it is.
All right, excellent.
And you can easily swim from one to the other.
Back in the day, I might have been able to do that, Frank. I don't know about anymore.
And so I like to tell people, and I meant to do that more with the wards of Newport, is sometimes people don't know what district they live in: 70, 71, 72, 73, 74, 75. So here we are. So Rick, when you had announced we had you on back in June, and here we are 2 months later, almost to the day of when you declared. And tell us, give us the background again of who you are and why you chose to run for a bigger seat.
Well, so I've lived in Middletown for almost 50 years, and I was originally from Bristol as a youngster, and we moved here back when my parents made a job change. Middletown's, my home, and I was a Newport police officer for 23 years, retired as a traffic sergeant, which is a real challenge when you figure in Newport it's noise and traffic and parking, and then there's everything else. So, and it kind of prepared me well. I mean, I was in public service almost my whole life, coaching at Rogers in Middletown. I was a wrestling coach for 25 years, working with kids, and then I got involved in Middletown with the Juvenile Hearing Board, Substance Abuse Task Force, and I had people, kind of bugging me to run for council for a long time, but I promised my wife and my kids that I would not delve into that until my kids were graduated from high school. So when my daughter graduated, she wasn't even across the stage yet, and I had made my announcement to my wife that I was going to give it a shot. So that was 6 years ago. I've been on the council for 3 terms, and I've thoroughly enjoyed my time in the council. I can tell you, I'm gonna miss it, to be honest with you. Being on the council, it's boots on the ground, it's grassroots. you're not looking at it from 20,000 feet. You're working with people day in and day out. You're not only talking to them on the phone and emailing them, but the way I do things is I'm knocking on their doors, and until COVID hit, I'm in their living rooms talking to them about what's important to them every day. You get a lot done behind the scenes, helping people out from the council. Our job is not to solve all their problems. Our job is to put them in the right room, with the right person, to help them solve their issues. That's what we do. We facilitate in many cases to help people out. So I think that's a little bit about me. My decision to run was one that I've been contemplating for quite a while, about a year and a half. To be honest with you, I made up my mind long before June, and I would have announced earlier. But with COVID, that took a priority. Took a priority in my life, took a priority with the council, took a priority for the town. And it wasn't about me running for another office. It was about me making sure that as a team with the council and with the town administrator and with all the departments and the schools, that we made sure Middletown was positioned well to get through this. And then I make my announcement when I was comfortable with that. I would have liked to announce sooner.
Are you dissatisfied with the job that the incumbent has done?
So I've known my opponent for better than 6 years. She's been there for 12. I have a problem with some of the things that have happened with the legislature in general. She got elected. She immediately became, within a couple of years, she became a part of the leadership. She was a deputy majority leader. She was in a good position on House Finance Committee. They literally created a committee for her, the Small Business Committee, where she was the chair. And, I've yet to see results that make me happy, number one, to be honest with you. And I can go over them one by one with you, Frank, but,
give me one or two of the big things that you think she's missed.
I think, when you're the chair of small business and she champions herself as being big for small business in the state, MSNBC for the last several years has a poll. They've ranked us 47th. They've ranked us 50th. They've ranked us 49th. And small businesses are reluctant to come to this state. They're reluctant to start new businesses here. Look at what's happening today with COVID. Look at the money that Commerce has got out there for grants for small businesses. And look at how much has been distributed. It's a prime example. The small businesses in the state are having a very difficult time in general. And now they're having a hard time getting these grants. Single owner businesses, you can't get the grant. They're being turned down. I mean, it's just a symptom of a much larger disease. There's too much oversight, too many fees, too many licenses. Make it simple. Make it so that people want to come and do business in the state of Rhode Island. The businesses are the lifeblood of our state. Small business, not the big corporations, small business. We need to do better. And when you're the chair of the Small Business Committee for 4 years, and you can't make something like that happen, you can't get legislation out there that does the right thing for small business, and we get ranked at the bottom. Rhode Island, we're small. We should be setting the tone for the rest of the country. We're small. It shouldn't be that hard to do. The truck tolls, perfect example. She supported truck tolls. Truckers are small businessmen. They're out there paying tolls. And guess what? When they pay those tolls, I had a friend of mine who's got a trucking business. He paid almost $20,000 in tolls total over the last couple of years. And he said it to me. He said, I got to pass it on to somebody, the consumer. These businesses, then everything we get comes by truck. No matter how you look at it, one way or another, it gets to you by truck. And she supported those tolls. That's not small business friendly.
Rick, before I get started here, I just have to, because I'm talking to a fellow wrestling alumni. I have to give a shout out to my Naughty Okers, the Coventry Naughty Okers. I just want to make sure that we mention the more dominant wrestling program in the state while I have the opportunity.
Well, hold on a minute. I wrestled over at Westwood High School. We were the most dominant program in all of New Jersey.
All right, next 45 minutes is nothing but wrestling.
So nothing but wrestling, but I can tell you that Dick McGarrian and the Smiths over at Coventry are good friends of mine. We used to go over and practice with them until we finished. We came in second in the state to them one year and almost knocked them off. So
Yeah.
Dick McGarrian said, "You can't practice with us anymore."
That's it. Learning all of our tricks. So
Yeah.
I guess we get started or Frank, you can get started. I'm just going to give you a programming note, Frank, because this is the first non-city councilor. I have all the questions up in front of me. So if you just want to throw a number in front of me, I can pull them up as well. So
Okay, so I want to stick with this, which is kind of off of that a little bit. And you mentioned the truck tolls. Is that something you would have voted against?
Absolutely would not have supported truck tolls.
Okay. Ryan, why don't we start right at the top under looking at the general political stuff? We've talked about qualifications, I think, but let's go to number 2. Go ahead.
And do you favor term limits for legislators and other members in the government?
I have no problem with term limits. We have term limits now on our general offices, the governor, lieutenant governor, attorney general, secretary of state, treasurer, and it seems to be working pretty well. Do I think 4 years is good? Probably not. I think maybe you could come up with some longer term limits, because at the end, it's just like being on the council in a way. It took me a good 2 years just to figure the budget out and figure out how the job works. So some type of term limit, yes. 4 years, I think maybe you could come up with something a little bit better, but I don't have a problem with term limits.
Well, the general officers, of course, are term limits of two 4-year terms. So a total of 8 years if you win re-election.
Frank, you were a little broken. Could you repeat that?
So there are general officers, the governor, lieutenant governor, so forth, have their term limited after 2 4-year terms, which means a total of 8 years in office. Does that sound reasonable for a legislator?
8 years sounds good. I think I said there's never been a serious discussion. But yeah, two 4-year terms sounds reasonable to me. I don't have a problem with it.
So I want to switch to, we've set this up in different areas, and we can obviously deviate, but I want to go to the coronavirus, COVID-19. And it seems that the legislature has played virtually no role in the state's efforts to mitigate the coronavirus. Are you satisfied with that?
So I think they could have played a role. The governor has the executive power, the state of emergency. The state constitution gives her that power. By the same token, when you're looking at how they're distributing, she's sitting on a lot of federal money that could have been distributed for the schools, could have been distributed to help small business. I think on that end, could have done better. But in general, the legislature, for the most part, has not expressed a real hard concern about what the governor's done so far. I think their major concern was A, the money she's sitting on, and B, the ability to help small business. But at the end, Frank, there was no playbook for this. None. Nobody ever in a million years, for all the rainy day funds, all the contingencies you try to figure out. This has just been, kind of call an audible every once in a while, as they say in football, and try to figure it out, whether it's opening the beaches, limiting what's going on in the bars and the restaurants and everything she's done. I think she's done a pretty good job for the most part, but I think it would have been okay for the legislature to play a little bit more active role in this.
And Rick, you are the chosen one on September 8th in the primary. You're the chosen one on November 3rd in the general. And then in a couple months, you are sitting there at the State House, hopefully. Obviously, we've talked about businesses already. They're suffering. Cities are suffering. Towns are suffering. The state's suffering. What do we do to help improve the business climate here in Rhode Island?
Well, first of all, with the businesses that are out there right now, if we don't help them now, they may not make it to January. So somebody needs to loosen up some purse strings to help out the businesses, the existing businesses right now. And then come January, we still don't know where we're going to be with Corona. There are small businesses are reluctant to start up right now. I mean, you look at what's going on in Middletown, Newport, and to a certain degree, even over in Jamestown, because I've been walking around talking to people there. But I think if things being normal, take Corona out of the picture, there have to be incentives for small business to come here, whether they be some type of tax incentive or something of that nature. Give them some predictability when they come into the state so that they know, these are the fees, these are the hoops I have to jump through. Pull back a little bit on, some of these businesses, they buy things, they pay the state tax on it, they tack that state tax on, and when they pass it on to the consumer, and then come January, they got to pay an inventory tax. You got to pay an inventory tax on something they've already bought. How is that good? How is that good for business? When you tax them twice, somebody pays for that. The consumer pays for that. But I think you have to look at what other states do. New York State, and I don't know what all their incentives are, but New York State is one of the top states in the country ranked for small business, and they attract small businesses. They're doing something right. Maybe we need to look at that. So maybe that would be one of the first things I do. Let's take a look and see what the states who are doing it well, and find out how we can do it better.
You touched on regulatory issues a couple of minutes ago, I think, and just kind of passing over it. I spent 10 years as editor of the Business News, and one of the things that I heard a lot from different businesses was the lack of consistency in regulations from one community to another, lack of consistent fees. I go register in Jamestown. I need to register in Middletown. I need to register in Burrillville. I need to register in Gloucester. I need to register in Providence. It is seems to be very difficult. And then on the regulatory end, there were constant complaints from people about the length of time it took to get through the process, where by the time they were reaching an answer, they didn't care what it was. They just wanted an answer.
So I had a talk with a local businessman recently who he's got businesses in Middletown. He's got business in New Hampshire and Connecticut. And between planning and zoning and everything he had to do in Connecticut, he was done in about 2.5 months. Through everything. Jumped through all the hoops he had to jump through. In Rhode Island, similar business, took him 1.5 years. Now, a lot of that is, zoning requirements. Do you have to get a variance? Do you need, all that good stuff, special use permits. In Middletown, I can tell you that I believe that the regulatory piece of it, when it comes to planning and zoning and trying to get a business going, is onerous. That's the best word I can use. I am so dissatisfied with what happens in this town. And I hear about it in other communities. In some communities, it's not as difficult. But, and you want to protect your community. I mean, you want to zone right, and you want to have good business. You want to make sure that, that they're operating in the best interests of the community. I get that. But I've got people who said to me, I'm not coming to Middletown. I have to hire an attorney. It's billable hours. And they're constantly one hoop after another and one fee after another. Now, there are certain things by statute the state oversees. They oversee tobacco, they oversee alcohol, and we can't tax or license any different than what any other community, and we have to go by state law. We got shut down when we wanted to get rid of the flavored tobaccos in Middletown, and we passed an ordinance because those things were targeted at our kids. You go look at the packaging, you go look at what they do, and the delivery systems, and we passed an ordinance. And the state of Rhode Island, the courts shot us down because they said that piece of the regulatory piece of it belongs to the state, just like alcohol. So some things we just don't have the say over. But when it comes to zoning, when it comes to planning and whatnot, and businesses, we certainly could make it easier for small business. Uniformly across the state, hard to do. Every town has a little piece of it. So, you can't just scoop it out from under them. And at the legislature, certain, the Providence delegation is really strong, and, the Pawtucket delegation is really strong. Here on Aquidneck Island, we have a lot of legislators, but unfortunately, I'm being told by some people that are actually up there now, if we stuck together here in Aquidneck Island and Jamestown as a group, together with our legislators, we could be pretty powerful up there. But apparently, some people don't know how to work as a team, which is too bad.
Would you support the current Speaker of the House?
No.
And I assume that the incumbent does. I'm not sure of that. I'm speculating.
She can speak for herself on that. She has in the past.
Rick, I'm gonna jump ahead a little bit, and maybe it will help see where we go for the rest of our conversation. If elected, what are your top 1, 2, 3, or 400 priorities?
So I think my top priority is, as we've been talking about, small business, improving the business climate in the state. Again, lifeblood. If we could do that, then you have the ability to not to have to tax the little guy as much. I think they're the lifeblood of this. I say it again. I keep using that word, but they are. And the small businesses. I think after that, we have to do something to improve the school, the education funding formula. Absolutely not sustainable for the communities in this state. I talked to people from all over, not just Middletown, Newport, Jamestown. I talked to someone from Jamestown the other day on the school committee about this. It's not sustainable. They have got to make it more equitable and balance it out. 80% in 10 years now, so that the school funding formula was enacted 10 years ago. And my opponent supported it then, and she still supports it. And I talked to the people from Rhode Island Department of Education. I specifically asked them a question. The urban core districts are funded significantly more than the southern part of the state in the East Bay. When they enacted the school funding formula, the 4 regional school districts in Middletown, those were the 5 communities that got hit the hardest. Middletown, almost $2.5 million over 10 years. Providence, over 10 years, was funded to the tune of 80% of their budget over 10 years. 80%. And what did that get us? It got us an underperforming, failed school district that the state of Rhode Island had to take over. Those were your tax dollars that did that. So the good performing districts get penalized, and the underperforming districts get an incentive and they get the money. There's something wrong with that picture. So that's the other piece of it.
So what would you do in that case? So we have underperforming districts that you think are getting a disproportionate amount of the money versus those districts that are performing well on whatever it is that they're receiving. Would you take the money from those poor districts and give it to the better performing districts? And where does that leave the kids?
I think you need to balance it out, Frank. It's not balanced. It's not fair and balanced. I'm not saying you look, they got 80%. 80% of their budget. 70% of the Middletown's budget are schools. 70%. And when you look at, so everybody wants to be like Massachusetts, right? Number one in the country in education. So the first thing you need to do is you need to do what Massachusetts did. You need to have a constitutional amendment that makes education a right. When you do that, then you have to fund their schools differently. So in Rhode Island right now, it's 60% of the funding is assumed by the town or the city. 40% is assumed by the state. In Massachusetts, it's exactly the opposite. It's 60% state, 40% funding. The difference is that in Massachusetts, they oversee curriculum, they oversee performance. If you're an underperforming district, the state steps in. They give you an improvement plan. If you don't live up to the improvement plan, then they come in and they take over the district and get you up and running again. And they pull back on your funding a little bit. But in Rhode Island, it doesn't happen. You waited until Providence was underwater, and then you went in and you stepped in. Should have been done a long time ago. They wouldn't be in the boat they're in now. But I'll tell you, that constitutional amendment, the one that people are lobbying for right now upstate, is important. We should be doing that. And then it would force the legislature to re-examine the school funding formula and make it more equitable. I had state legislators say to me, well, you know, and this is people from the Providence district, the Providence delegation. Well, you know, you have the capacity to tax more. We have the capacity to tax more. We're an aging community. We're a shrinking community. Jamestown's in the same boat to a certain degree. And I'm going to go tell some senior citizen who's living on $2,200 a month Social Security that they told me upstate I have the ability to tax you more. And I'll tax you right out of your house. You know, we want our seniors to age in place. And you can't continue to keep going to that well. But that's what they tell you. You know, tax your people more. You know, somewhere along the line, that's not the right thing to say.
So Henry, we got to two of your priorities so far. We got the small business and we got the education. What else is on your list?
My third one is, I mentioned seniors. We need to find a way to get more affordable senior housing. We need to find a way to help our seniors age in place. They want to stay in their homes if they can, and they should. And right now, I don't think we do enough for our seniors. So that's another piece. And I will tell you that, you know, when you think about the state budget, you know, and our seniors and the hundreds of millions of dollars every year that we start the budget in a deficit every single year. And that's the other priority. But it all comes into play because the senior money, that money that we send down to the senior centers and to help with affordable housing, it all comes from that budget. And this is another thing. You know, my opponent sat on the House Finance Committee for all those years, deputy chair, vice chair of the Finance Committee, and year after year after year, 170 million, 150 million. This year, without COVID, 200 million. She voted for all of those budgets. She never once stood up and said, this is not right. We're coming up with these budgets and we're plugging holes and creating structural deficits that you don't know you can fill the next year, year after year after year. And she supported that. And I don't understand it. If you're such an independent thinker and you want to stand on your own 2 feet and you don't support the leadership, then you stand up and you speak up. You know, she didn't support the speaker last election. She lost her chairmanship on the Small Business Committee. She lost her seat on the House Finance Committee. She's no longer the deputy majority leader. But the fact of the matter is, she goes with the Reform Caucus, and I applauded her for that. I thought that was a great move. And then look at her voting record. Over 97% she voted with the leadership. And still she got nothing done for the district. She can't even get a bill out of committee up there. There's something wrong with that picture when you can't get anything done for your district.
One of the taxes that people look at, and it has been pushed by the speaker each year, is the elimination of the car tax. I'm not sure where we're at with it at the moment, but it's a tax that actually the towns collect, and the money goes into the town budget. Eliminating it takes that money from the town budget, but the state supposedly is reimbursing the towns for that. A, do you support that? And B, do you believe that in fact, over time, that money is still going to be reimbursed to the towns by the state?
So they are reimbursing the towns. I think it's on the third year of a 5-year. I think it's a 5-year pay down. And they've been reimbursing us. I'm not against eliminating the car tax. Nobody likes the car tax. And every community's piece of the revenue from the car tax was different. So I believe, and I could be wrong, that Providence, taxes their cars significantly higher at a higher rate than Middletown does. But as long as they keep reimbursing us, and once it gets paid down, I don't have a problem with it.
Do you believe it's going to be reimbursed forever?
Nothing's forever, Frank, and nothing's forever, especially in politics. I don't know. Again, when you see what happens with things in the legislature, who knows what someone's going to say 8-10 years down the road. 8 to 10 years, I'm hoping I'm sitting on a beach someplace, not worrying about this stuff. But to be honest with you, I don't know. It's hard to say.
Rick, speaking about not worrying about things, I'm sure the worry of many in District 74, Jamestown and Middletown, is having an affordable place to live. How do we make District 74, Jamestown, Middletown, as well as Rhode Island, more affordable and attractive for people to live of any background, as well as for families?
This is a conundrum for me, because Ryan, I am so in tune to what's happening in this district and how it's not affordable for young families to start. And as I look around my own community, and I look around Jamestown, as I've spent more time there recently, I think at the end of the day, you've got to make it attractive for a developer to come in, build affordable housing. The problem is there's not a lot of land left that's developable, believe it or not, particularly in Middletown, because I know Middletown well. I've talked to several builders, and they asked me the same question: where do you put it? On the east side of town, there's a lot of land, but a lot of it's not developable. A lot of it's wetland. A lot of it's protected under the land trust, which is fine. I'm happy with that. But to meet that 10% that everybody has to meet it's not easy. We had, one of our Oxbow come out from under the HUD umbrella. Once when we had Oxbow, under HUD, we met the 10%. But they paid off their mortgage, and they went off the HUD rolls, and so you lose that. But I mean, it's the same with senior housing. We're in the process of, the plans are in the works with senior housing. It's the same problem. There's never enough. There's just never enough. And I look at the prices of houses here in Jamestown, and I just say, how does a young family do it? And my kids couldn't do it. It's a very difficult problem statewide. And I think at the end of the day, when it's all said and done, it's a discussion that needs to be had in more depth. There's no right answer.
So anywhere we drive in Rhode Island, we're assured that we're going to be delayed by some kind of road construction. I know I tried to avoid some road construction the other day, only to run into road construction on the road that I was using to get around the road construction. So we've got all this money going into our infrastructure right now, and I believe, and I may be wrong, but I believe that one of the reasons our roads and bridges are in the conditions that they are or were was because the money that was supposed to be going into the fund to support upkeep of those roads did not. It in fact funneled into the general fund. How are we going to correct that in the future? We may fix the roads now, but is the money going to be available to keep them up?
So it's about preventive maintenance, Frank. It's about, what they didn't do for years was pay attention. I know I was in the highway safety business, and I know there's millions of dollars in money out there in highway safety and for road construction. And it's kind of funny that when they instituted .08 and the primary seatbelt law, one of the reasons that Rhode Island resisted both of those laws for years until the federal government told them they were going to take away the highway money and the federal highway money and the highway safety money and the money to roads, fix roads and bridges. And they passed both of those laws, which I think in the end of the day, for me, as a former police officer, those were good laws, to be honest. But they never funneled, you're right, they never funneled that money where it was supposed to go. And that's one of the reasons why I just sponsored a resolution with Middletown Town Council to oppose the Rhode Island Bridge and Turnpike Authority and the proposal to take RIDOT and combine them. That's a money grab. Don't let anybody kid you. That opens the coffers for monies that was earmarked for our 4 bridges and to be able to funnel toward highway safety highway projects that they can't fund right now. On top of the truck tolls that they're taking that are supposed to be going towards these projects. So I think what you do, and I'm not a big fan of restricted receipt accounts, but the fact of the matter is maybe that's what they ought to be doing, is making it so that the money they're getting is millions and millions and millions of dollars to fix our roads and bridges from the federal government, thanks to Jack Reed in particular. And maybe it should be a restricted receipt where you got to spend it on this, and it can't be put into the general fund to fund a poorly performing entity in the state government. But that takeover of the Rhode Island Turnpike and Bridge Authority is a shady move on the governor's part, right? Because there's a lot of money sitting with those bridges, and they know it.
Rick, I got to get you on record so that way I don't get hate mail after this conversation.
What's wrong with hate mail?
I get it all the time. No, I'm only kidding.
I can hear it now. How do you have him on and not talk about education and talk about, wouldn't we save a lot of money if we just regionalized everything? Can you just give a little background into your thoughts on regionalization and why you made the decisions you did as a Middletown council member regarding regionalization? So
to be clear, okay, I've stated this publicly recently on another forum, and everybody that was on with me, including my opponent, said they were against regionalization of school districts. Okay. I'm not against a unified high school. And there's a difference. The proposal that was put in front of us by the Newport school superintendent was full-blown pre-K through 12 regionalization. Don't let anybody tell you differently. It was not about just a unified high school. And if you look at the state law that covers regionalization, there's a piece in there that talks about eminent domain, where they could just take your property and build. The other piece of it is excuse me, you lose control of your school committee. Okay, the control of the school committee goes to the majority goes to the community that has the larger population. It's Newport, whether it's 5 people, so it's 3-2. If you wanted to build a new school in Middletown, a new elementary school, Forest Avenue is not good anymore. It goes on a referendum. That bond has to pass in both communities. You lose control. If you went with a unified high school, tuition to Newport kids, and by the way, I talked to city councilors, I talked to the school committee members, and I talked to the superintendent of schools in Newport, all of them. And I said, why not tuition your kids out to Middletown? We have a high school that held 1,200 kids when the Navy was here. There's plenty of room. That's how you start out, tuition your kids out. Get out of the high school business in Newport. And then as you move along, it's going to take time and planning anyway if you're going to build a new high school. You figure out how it's working, your new curriculum, you bring all the kids together under one roof. Newport still has control of their school budget. Middletown still has control of their school budget. And you pay Middletown to bring your kids in. Jamestown's been doing it for years. Jamestown, their kids go to Narragansett or North Kingston. They have a choice. Works really good for them. They didn't have to regionalize. They still have control of their elementary schools and their kids and their budget. That's where I stand on this. And I mentioned this again, what I mentioned earlier. And I've said this to a couple of our legislators as you look at the school funding formula. When they did that school funding formula 10 years ago, I'll say it again, the 3 biggest losers were the regional school districts. Bristol, Warren, Chara Hope, Pontiac, and then Middletown came in after them. And to be honest with you, when you look at that, where's the incentive to regionalize? You get penalized. The money goes somewhere else. Incentivize it. Make it worth their while. Hang on one. Just realized that my phone was going off.
Is that a home phone?
That's a phone, yeah.
Home phone?
Home phone.
Wow. You're one of them.
Yeah, it's a rotary phone.
I'm
Probably
one of
a rotary
those,
phone.
rotary, but I've got a package deal with Cox. If I get rid of my phone, my bill goes. So, so anyway, so honestly, I said this to Lou DePalma recently, and Lou's a good friend of mine, and maybe this is one of the areas where we don't disagree totally. I said, Lou, make the funding formula so that there's an incentive to regionalize. That's all I'm asking. There's nothing there right now. But if they want to unify the high school without regionalization, I'll be the first one in the room to support it.
Frank, where do you want to go?
I'm going to go to Black Lives Matter a little bit, and I want to take a look at the situation in Rhode Island. Certainly, it's different region to region. But do you perceive that we have any racial inequities in Rhode Island, and if so, how do we address them?
Frank, we got racial inequities in this country, and Rhode Island is no different. I'm probably better positioned than anybody to talk about this, being a former police officer, having worked in Newport, which is as diverse a community as anyone you can imagine. You know, I spent my first 4 or 5 years in the north end of the city. And, you know, I can tell you, as a kid that grew up, I'm going to age myself, Frank, as a kid that grew up in the 60s, and I remember what happened, okay? I remember Selma. I remember Birmingham. I remember Chicago. I saw what happened, you know, the riots and the protesting and the marches and the whole bit. And you know something? It was a problem then. It's a problem now. This has been a wound that's been, should have had a tourniquet put on it, and they put Band-Aids on it for all those years. And I say that coming from a guy who was a cop for all those years. I worked with kids at the high school. I was a coach. I worked with those kids. I worked with the underserved kids. I sat on the juvenile hearing board. They absolutely have a gripe because this country has not done the right thing, not just the state or the community. And at the end of the day, you know, Black Lives Matter. You're damn right. And so do the Browns and the Latinos and the LGBTQ, and they all belong at the table. The Native Americans, they all belong at the table. And until that happens, you're not fixing this problem.
How do we make it happen?
I think, look, it starts at the top. All right. The federal government's going to set the tone. And right now, they're not doing it right. At the end, that's how I feel. But again, you know what? You need to take care of what's going on in your own backyard. I know that Senator Metz has got a group put together that they're going to sit and talk. But again, Senator Metz's group is flawed as far as I'm concerned, because they're not all at the table. The stakeholders are not all at the table. You got to bring them all in. Again, the Browns, the Latinos. You bring in the women, the LGBTQ. They're all underserved. And you need to put the police and the city officials at the same table too, because you don't talk it out and you don't figure it out unless you're all talking together and looking at each other across the table. Put them in the same room and lock the door and figure it out.
Rick, what do you think we can do? Obviously, police are needed in our communities in District 74. They're needed in Jamestown. They're needed in Middletown. What can we do to build trust and relationship between police and the people in the community?
So, you know, Newport back in the 90s was one of the first departments in the state of Rhode Island to institute true community-based policing. We opened up an office up in what was then Townemy Hill. It's now Newport Heights. Then they opened up another office down on Broadway. And community policing, to a degree, is a piece of it. You know, you need to get down and put boots on the ground. You need to get into the community. You need to meet with the neighborhood groups and talk to people and network. You know, you can look at Jimmy Winters. Jeez. You know, Jimmy is a good friend of mine. I worked with him for years, and there's nobody who's done more for the relationship between the police and the community more than a guy like Jimmy Winters. But we all worked hard at it. We had to, because we had issues in Newport that we needed to get our arms around. That's a model that other police departments in the state have followed. It's been successful in other parts of the country. You know, we were the poster child for that stuff in Newport. And then make no mistake about it, they brought some of my colleagues who were on kicking and screaming. You know, we're not social workers. Well, guess what? Yes, you are. Because 90% of the issues that the police deal with on the street every day are social issues. It's not all cops and robbers, what you see on TV.
So are the police trained to be able to deal with those issues? So
that's been coming along slowly, Frank, and it's coming along too slow. It should be an ongoing training. Now, when they say defund the police, hey, look, that's unrealistic.
But I think that's a misinterpretation. Those people who believe in defund the police are really talking about. Actually, I've heard them talk about they want more police on the ground. They want their communities protected, but they also want the other professionals like social workers in place. So when a police officer goes out somewhere, they're accompanied by a professional, by a social worker who then can help maybe diffuse the situation instead of it getting out of control.
So that's happening right now in Middletown and Newport. They have a trained professional, psychologist, I believe, who does social worker type thing. There's an office in those two police departments, and there's a person on call that can go out on a call with them for a domestic or a suicidal person or something like that. We never had that when I was on the job. They have it now. It's happening. They don't publicize it. These are the things you never hear about. Right. It's unfortunate, but they should. But you're right. Not every department is doing it. I know Providence hasn't. Providence is, when you look at the size of Providence with 400 plus police officers, and you look at what goes on in that city, it's amazing. It's amazing. that we're not one of the top in crime in New England for what they do up there. It's amazing. I worked up at Brown with the Department of Public Safety up at Brown. I worked on the street with those Providence cops. I know what they do. They're slaves to the radio. And believe me, it's not easy. And I saw it firsthand, coming from 20 some odd years in Newport and thinking I knew what was going on. And I got a chance to see that. I mean, my hat's off to Chief Clemens and what's going on up there, because they are, you talk about difficult. But to get back to what you were saying, Frank, and I didn't mean to get off on anything, but training is the key. Training is the key. They need to diversify the training. They need to get more training where they have a course called verbal judo. That, I took it when I went up to Brown, and I'm thinking, geez, I could have used this when I was in Newport. I would have diffused so many situations that would have been much easier for me to handle had I had that training. They have the nonviolence training. Again, I got that up at Brown. I didn't get that in Newport, where you get a chance to talk to people who've had issues with the police in the past, and it's called the Kingian nonviolence training. Amazing stuff. These are all programs that are out there. So, as you said, it's not defund, it's reallocate, it's rethink about how you can do things better and interact with the community better. It's, as we said in Newport, it's, the police and community should be partners in excellence. And that's what we need to take into consideration. It's changing old habits about policing. When I first went on the job, it was different. We still had vestiges of the Navy. We had a fishing fleet. We had all kinds of bars downtown that you would never think about seeing here now. But we evolved as a police department, and we evolved as a community, and that's what needs to happen all over the country.
Go ahead, Frank.
Yeah, I just want one more area that I wanted to touch on that's really important to the state of Rhode Island, and actually maybe takes on even greater significance today as a major hurricane may at this moment be hitting the Gulf Coast. We haven't had one in a long time, but climate change certainly is part of our concern. What do you think the state ought to be doing in order to position ourselves or mitigate the impact of climate change?
So it's a good question, and I use climate change and sea level rise. An example is Second Beach, 1973. I could show you an overlay of Second Beach, and if I showed you an overlay today, it doesn't look like the same beach. We're losing a foot of beach a year. Since 1973, we've lost a foot of beach a year to sea level rise in general, and erosion. You look at what happened over at Beavertail in Jamestown. They've had to shut down a piece of that due to erosion and the weather and the climate change. And I think there are monies out there that we should take advantage of to shore up our coastlines, to do better with seawalls, to protect places like the Point section in Newport. I mean, they're working on things now to mitigate the flooding situation over there. That never happened when I was on the job. I don't remember the Point flooding on a regular basis like it floods now. When you look at what happens, around Second Beach, First Beach, with the flooding that happens down there every time we get a big storm. I can tell you, it never happened back in the day, and something needs to be done. I know that Senator Whitehouse has a really great presentation on. We're not looking that far off. That we're going to have a major problem when we get a really big storm. We're going to lose some homes. We're going to lose some businesses, and this is a case of, again, the federal government should be doing a better job.
Superstorm Sandy did a number, particularly on South County. I remember going there right after the storm and finding the beach back. Basically, the sand had been pushed up by about 6-8 blocks. Houses where nobody could go in the houses for a while. There are restaurants that still haven't recovered from that. So that's going to be more the norm than it is to being the aberration here.
It is, and again, when you talk about development, you know, part of the problem is we overdeveloped along the coast. We probably should have had a barrier where back in the day, nobody had the vision, although they've been talking about this for years, to be able to say, this is where it stops, and this is where we need to protect what we have. And they didn't do that. But I can tell you the power of Mother Nature is incredible. And during Sandy, I was on a post out on the Ocean Drive. I was working, I was retired, but they brought us all back to work for that. And I watched over by the Newport Country Club, the water and the rocks, the huge rocks come over the seawall. And this big wave came over. And the next thing I knew, the wave went back, and there was a bluefish sitting in the middle of Ocean Avenue. It washed up right out of the ocean. But I mean, the way it changed the coast, Sandy did, was just incredible. You talk to the homeowners, you know, the things that insurance didn't cover. But I think part of the problem is we should have some more vision, and we need to try to correct years of what I believe to be a neglect of our coastline.
We got one more for you. Oh, go ahead, Frank.
Go on. I was just going to say we've been going on for about an hour. So,
well, I got
I know. We're having a good time.
Yeah. We can go on forever. So, if elected, or why or how do you feel like you'll make a difference?
Well, you've got 70 some odd legislators up there. I'm one person, but I'd like to be a voice for change. I'd like to be a voice for, let's do things a little bit differently. Let's look at the budget a little bit differently. I applaud anybody that does this. That includes my opponent. Anyone that runs for office should be applauded for giving their time, taking time away from their families and everything else that goes with it. But at the end of the day, it's been the same thing year after year after year. I think it's a problem when, had I not run, my opponent would have been unopposed. And it's happening all over the state. You don't have change and you don't affect change without infusing some new blood in once in a while. So that's where I see, a voice for the little guy, the boots on the ground. That's what I've done. The difference between me and my opponent is I've been a town councilor. I've built budgets from the ground up. We've had balanced budgets. We've had zero tax increases for 4 years. We've managed to have 100% funding on our pensions. Who says that? Who says that? And then when we get hit with COVID, we're in a pretty good position. We had to pull back a little bit. We had to go to the rainy day fund. We had one. But at the end of the day, when it was all said and done, we funded 1,500 laptops for our schools. We funded the PPE. And by the way, the 1,500 laptops and the PPE didn't come out of the school budget. That came out of the town budget. And we gladly did it. And I'd support it again tomorrow. But we were well positioned to do that. Some communities are not.
Any of that money for computers come from the Rhode Island Foundation?
No. That was.
We've been going for a while here, Rick. Did we any topics, ideas, issues, anything you're hearing that you wanted to bring up, chat about?
Well, I think we've touched on a lot, Ryan. The budget's a big thing with me. The senior citizens are huge for me. The veterans home, I didn't mention the veterans home. That's a real problem. You know, when you talk about doing the right thing for our senior veterans that served our country, and guess what? They build a brand new veterans home and they go doors up there you can't get wheelchairs through.
Yeah.
Who the heck was looking at that?
Yep.
And DCYF is another issue. We've got kids dying under the care of DCYF, and they're operating. Both of those state departments are operating in the red. There's a big issue there. And again, what has my opponent been doing? You vote for these budgets, you see this stuff happening, and I never hear her talk about it. You know, I mean, who are you keeping happy? Are you keeping people who elected you happy, or are you keeping the leadership happy? I don't get it. I have a problem with it. But so I think we've touched on everything, and I appreciate the time. You guys have been great. You know,
we appreciate you're doing this as well, and it's you know, a real benefit to the voters to have the opportunity to hear your position on these issues, to see you and get to know you a little bit better.
I'll do it anytime, Brian. You know that I'm always here when anybody wants to talk, and I will say that, you know, this election is like none other. You know, people are afraid to go to the polls. They're worried, and they're voting by mail ballot. And I know the mail ballots are out, so you know there aren't going to be any more out there. But I want to say to the public that voting is one of the last rights we have that are so important to us in this country. Get out and vote, no matter who you vote for. Either go to the polls. Your town halls are open for emergency voting right now. You can go in and it's safe. Only one person at a time. You know, it's protected. And of course, if you have a mail ballot, please don't let it sit there. Get out and vote on September 8th. It's important. It's important no matter who wins this election that everybody exercise their right to vote. I'll tell you one thing I was upset about is that the state legislature, particularly the Senate, actually the House passed it, that they wanted the state Secretary of State to send out applications for mail ballots to everyone, just like they did for the presidential preference primary. And I don't care what it cost, but they disenfranchised a group of voters who won't go to the polls. They should have sent those applications out and allowed those people the opportunity to vote. Like I said, get out and vote on September 8th, and I hope I have the support of the people in the district. But I appreciate your time, fellas.
Of course. If anybody wants to get a hold of you, Rick, for questions, information, and anything else, what are the best way to get a hold of you?
Everybody's got my cell phone number, so it's 401-418-0512. I'll talk to anybody anytime. Just give me a call. My Facebook page is probably the most active, so it's Rick for Rick for District 74 at Facebook. Holy moly! I just had
It's okay.
I had one of those. I had a senior moment.
It's all right. So he is Rick Lombardi. He is running for District 74, September 8th primary. That is Jamestown and portion of Middletown. And again, September 8th is the primary. So Rick, we want to thank you for participating.
Ryan, Frank, thanks so much. And
thank you, Rick.
You know,
good
luck to you on the rest of your interviews. 18 or 19 in Newport, and you got 18 in Middletown. Holy moly! I'm almost glad I'm not doing that one again.
We're going to probably finish this sometime in December.
Yeah, something like that. So, Rick, very best of luck, and we will talk to you again soon.
Thanks, fellas. Have a good day.
All right.
Take
he is
care,
Rick Lombardi. Rick Lombardi Jr. is where you will find him on your primary ballot in Jamestown as well as in Middletown.
If I'm correct in what I'm looking at, I think so. We've got Representative 70, which is Tiverton, is just general election. We've got 71 where we've got a primary, which is John Edwards the 5th, Michelle Magoa, and Amy Very. So we have a primary. Chris Seminelli, Terry Cortrind, and Kenneth J. Mendonca. 73 unopposed. Marvin Abney unopposed. I'll come back to that in a minute. Then, of course, the one in 74 that we just talked about, which we have Rick Lombardi against Deborah Giro. And then 75 is the general election with Lauren Carson and Patrick Donovan. So I'm going to make this real quick on campaign finance. So people raise money to be able to finance their campaigns. They can give to charity, they can give to other candidates, or they can raise enough of a nest egg out there that that makes people think a second about running against someone who is pretty well heeled. Marvin Abney, and nothing against Marvin, and Marvin has done a superb job of fundraising. He's running unopposed. He's sitting with $118,000 in his campaign fund. That's not a negative. That's more a positive. It says to me that people are supportive of him, and he's able to do some things and get information out in a lot of different ways. So I salute anybody who's able to fundraise, and you'll see it more in these representative and general assembly races in general, that they're raising more money than on a local level. Just the nature of the beast, particularly incumbents do. Some of them do very well. There's one person in the leadership, I think, in the House who's running unopposed, who has over $1 million in their campaign fund.
Wow.
We'll
and
talk
why
about
Frank
that
brings
later
that
on.
up now is nothing to do with Rick Lombardi at all.
Nope.
It just so happens to be at the end of this interview. We have done more than 50 stories on campaign finances over the last couple of years, and there is a candidate for I'm going to completely get Rick off this. So it's a candidate for city council
Exactly.
A candidate for city council who was upset that we did a report, a factual, non-opinionated, non-biased, non-partisan report on campaign finance. And some of her supporters have come out and think that we're trying to be divisive. And now somebody on local radio has also taken up her side of the campaign and saying that we are, whatever the language may have been, let's see here, that we are trying to create controversy in regards to campaign finances. And
it's the most absurd thing. I've been in journalism for 322 years. I think somewhere's around there. Campaign finance has always been a piece of every election. We put out information for what it is. We often, and we didn't do it in this case, take a look at donors and take a look at where money is spent. You'll see that in Kathy Gregg will do it all the time in the Providence Journal. You see it in the federal campaigns. It's just reporting on the facts. It is public record. It is with the Board of Elections. People are required to file reports, and you look at them to see what you see, how much money they may or may not have, but even more so, you look at who they're influencing and who's influencing them. I urge everybody to go. You go to the election. I urge everybody to go to the Board of Elections and take a look at the public records that are out there, and you'll learn a lot about the candidates. It's about information, about having as much information as you can have to be able to go out and vote intelligently.
And again, we bring it up because a candidate has beat us up over it. Some of her supporters have beat us up over it. Business owners beat us up over it, and now a Republican radio host in the area has beat us up over it. And it's factual, it's informative, and
be a journalist. Be a journalist and report the news, not try to play into your own bias.
And part of me wonders if there's a reason why they're upset that we're reporting it. Anyway, let's carry on. Coming up here over the next couple of days, we have emails out to all candidates and local seats that are running in primaries, and we will be booking them over the next couple of days. If you are a candidate, you're watching this, we haven't talked to you, and you have a primary on September 8th, please get in touch. Ryan at whatsupnewp.com. I am waiting. most likely we'll have John Edwards V, who's running up in Tiverton and Portsmouth tomorrow. And we will be keeping this series ongoing as long as we need. If you have any feedback for us about these series, Ryan at whatsupnewp.com as well. I just want to make sure, let's see here. You got it? Frank? Lobsters?
Tough to read.
Oh, man, I got to get a little closer. We got lobsters, mobsters in Rhode Island.
Excellent.
All right, man. We will talk to you tomorrow when we chat with another primary candidate who is yet to be announced.
All right, good deal. Thank you, Ryan. Catch up with you later.
All right. And on behalf of Frank Prosnitz and myself, I want to thank Henry Rick Lombardi Jr. for joining us today. Again, he is on the primary ballot, September 8th primary ballot. He is running in District 74, Jamestown, Middletown, and he is looking for your vote. Find the video as well as much more information on whatsupnewp.com. And we will continue the series here tomorrow. I'm just making sure. Yep, there we go. And I want to thank you for watching. All of our voter information can be found on whatsupnewp.com. Till next time.